Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Crossing the Line by the band Asia Minor.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
Again, as I noted out yesterday, minor as the adjective, not as the profession. I guess you all knew it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Anyway, here are some of my favorite bits from this album. So Asia Minor are a little known band in the vast world of symphonic prog. They formed back in 1973 by two Turkish students who were residing in France at the time, and then with the help of two other French players they formed this band in 1973, but the album we're looking at today is their debut album, and that one was only released in 1979. Now before I get into reviewing this album, I should note that up until recently this band only had two albums to their name, but as of lately in 2020 this band actually reformed and released a new album which actually seems to be quite successful. And today's album we're looking at, Crossing the Line, to me at least sounded a lot like Camel's music. Now it's really fun that we get something like this because usually we don't get stuff like this on the list. We always find things that are, inspired by Pink Floyd or inspired by Genesis or so many other bands, but we don't really see a lot of Camel inspirations on here. And this is all felt with those Middle Eastern influences that can be found on here. Of course they're probably taken from their Turkish origins, but still it really feels like what Camel does. There's also the lovely flute playing which really sounds like Andrew Latimer's flute playing from Camel, and the overall vibe of this album is very mystical, much like the stories that Camel like telling within their music. And this album, despite following many of the preconceived ideas that are present in symphonic prog in the West, also has a lot of other influences, and overall I can say that the music on here has some sort of an exotic sense to it, probably because they bring some of those Turkish influences, traditional influences, into this Western contemporary music. I'd say that this album kind of feels deserty in some way, so you get like a feeling you're stranded in a desert and everything's pretty calm and relaxed and you're not really, hinging upon surviving. I would say that this one is very much similar to some songs from Moon Madness or even Mirage by Camel. Now most tracks on here are sung in English and they're pretty nice, but the thing is they are expectedly pretty heavily accented. Now I've noted many times in the past that doesn't bother me, but in this specific case it really kind of did get to me and I didn't really like it. But we're very lucky because there are a few tracks on here sung in their native tongue of Turkish, and those ones are definitely my favorite overall. And yeah, Turkish itself, it's a lovely language. I really like its origin. I like the way that it, comprises itself of several influences from the Western and Eastern world, and I think that Turkish prog music would sound fantastic, but the thing is I am highly debating if we even have any other Turkish bands on this list so far. I believe we don't, and in that case I would love to get to know more of the Turkish prog scene, so if any of you have any recommendations for great Turkish prog albums, you feel free to write them down in the comments and I'll note them down to myself. But overall I don't really have a lot to say about this album. It feels like this album is very much filled with potential. They have the right ideas, they have the right capabilities, they're just not motivated in the right way quite yet. Maybe it's something to do with their mindset at the time, I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to getting to know their second album, which overall seems to be much more highly regarded. But unfortunately that second album, called Between Flesh and Divide, is not present on this year's list, so of course I've added it onto the reserve list, but I am doubtful whether I'm gonna get it anytime soon, but hopefully I wouldn't be listening to it when my hair turns gray. But yeah, for all of you Camel lovers that don't know this album quite yet, I highly advise you to go ahead and check it out. It isn't as great as any of the Camel albums that I was talking about in this video, but it definitely is something reminiscent of that, and that's pretty interesting to listen to once in a while. But anyway, let's move on to the cover. So this cover to me seems quite reminiscent of late 70s to early 80s covers. I don't really know how to explain it, but it just looks like that. The colors on here are quite nice. I really like the shade of sort of orangey brown, very light, that is over on the background, and then you've got the rainbow colors in the middle. It kind of reminds me of a computer screen. Maybe it's like a very primitive version of that type of technology at the time. But honestly, the thing I think I really liked about this cover, it's quite surprising, it's actually the band logo. It's pretty simple, it doesn't have a lot to it, but it's also very recognizable, and I like that quite a bit. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have a lot to say about this pretty simple cover. I think it's pretty nice, and it's definitely somewhat memorable. But when it comes to the rating of this album, this one gets a rating of 7 out of 10, and I'm definitely looking forward to be surprised and even to have this album surpassed by their second album, Between Flesh and Divine. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Lady of Shalott by the band Atmosphera. For all of you Israeli viewers, this one's for you. It's one of the OG prog albums from Israel, and I'm really looking forward to listening to that one. And you know it's pretty obscure when you don't even have it on Spotify. I of course want to thank my lovely supporter over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Walnum. You are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.